What happens when the son of one of Hollywood's most beloved directors steps forward with a warning that shakes everyone to their core? Jake Reiner, the eldest son of legendary filmmaker Rob Reiner, recently made statements that left people absolutely speechless. This wasn't just another celebrity family drama or a simple disagreement behind closed doors. No, what Jake revealed carries weight that goes far beyond Hollywood gossip. It's a message about truth, about family, and about the consequences of staying silent when speaking up matters most. Stay with me because what you're about to hear will change the way you think about fame, family loyalty, and the price people pay for standing in their truth. Before we dive into what Jake said and why it matters so much, let's take a moment to understand who these people are. Rob Reiner isn't just any director. He's the mastermind behind some of the most iconic films in American cinema. We're talking about movies like When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride, Stand By Me, and A Few Good Men. These aren't just films. They are cultural touchstones that define generations. Rob Reiner built a legacy that most people in Hollywood can only dream about. He's won awards, earned respect from his peers, and created stories that millions of people cherish. But Rob Reiner isn't just known for his films. He's also been incredibly vocal about his political beliefs and social causes. Over the years, he's used his platform to speak out on issues ranging from environmental protection to political reform. He's never been shy about sharing his opinions, even when those opinions spark controversy. Some people admire him for his courage to speak his mind. Others criticize him for being too outspoken. Regardless of where you stand, there's no denying that Rob Reiner has always been someone who uses his voice loudly and clearly. Now let's talk about Jake Reiner. As Rob's eldest son, Jake grew up in the shadow of massive success and constant public attention. Imagine what it's like being the child of someone so famous, someone whose work is celebrated worldwide. There's pressure that comes with that kind of legacy. People expect you to follow in those footsteps, to live up to the family name, to somehow match or exceed what your parent accomplished. For some children of celebrities, that pressure becomes too much. They retreat from the spotlight entirely. For others, they try to carve out their own path while constantly being compared to their famous parents. Jake took a different route. He's lived a relatively private life compared to his father. He hasn't chased the same level of fame or attention. He's worked in the entertainment industry, but has mostly stayed behind the scenes, away from the cameras and the constant scrutiny that comes with being a Reiner. For years, people barely heard from Jake publicly. He seemed content to let his father occupy the spotlight while he lived his life on his own terms. That's what makes his recent warning so shocking. This isn't someone who craves attention or who regularly makes public statements to stay relevant. This is someone who deliberately chose privacy, who could have easily continued living quietly without ever saying a word. But something pushed Jake to speak up. Something became too important to ignore, too significant to keep hidden behind closed doors. So what exactly did Jake say that has everyone talking? According to reports and statements that have circulated, Jake issued a warning about the dangers of losing yourself in your own righteousness. He talked about how people, even those with the best intentions, can become so convinced of their own correctness that they stop listening to others. They stop questioning themselves. They stop seeing the humanity in people who disagree with them. Jake's warning wasn't just directed at random strangers on the internet. The implication suggested he was speaking from personal experience, from watching someone very close to him fall into this trap. The truth that nobody expected was this: Jake was essentially warning about the very thing his father had become known for. Rob Reiner's passionate activism and his unwavering stance on political and social issues had, according to Jake's perspective, crossed a line. It had moved from principled advocacy into something else entirely. Something that creates division rather than understanding. Something that pushes people away rather than bringing them together. Think about how difficult that must have been for Jake. Imagine loving your father, respecting what is accomplished, understanding that his intentions come from a good place, but also recognizing that something has gone wrong. Imagine watching someone you care about become so consumed by their beliefs that they can't see how they're affecting the people around them. And then imagine having to make the choice to speak publicly about it, knowing that your words will be dissected, analyzed, and potentially used against both you and your father. This is what makes Jake's warning so powerful and so heartbreaking at the same time. He wasn't attacking his father out of spite or revenge. He wasn't trying to tear down his father's legacy or embarrass him publicly. Instead, Jake was doing something that takes incredible courage. He was speaking a truth that he believed needed to be heard, even though it would undoubtedly cause pain, create controversy, and potentially damage family relationships. The core of Jake's message centered around the idea that conviction without compassion becomes cruelty, that standing up for what you believe in is important, but not when it means dehumanizing everyone who sees things differently, that being right about something doesn't give you permission to treat others as less than human. These concepts might sound simple, but they cut to the heart of one of the biggest problems we face in society today. We live in a time of intense polarization. People on all sides of political and social issues have retreated into their corners, convinced that they hold the moral high ground while everyone else is either ignorant or evil. Social media has made this worse by creating echo chambers where we only hear from people who already agree with us. We've lost the ability to have genuine conversations with people who see the world differently. We've forgotten how to disagree without declaring our opponents as enemies. Jake's warning speaks directly to this problem. His saying that his own father, someone he loves and respects, has fallen victim to this same trap. Rob Reiner, despite all his success and intelligence and good intentions, has become so rigid in his beliefs that he's lost sight of the bigger picture. He has become the kind of person who sees disagreement as betrayal, who interprets different perspectives as moral failings, who can't find common ground with anyone who doesn't share his exact worldview. What makes this particularly tragic is that Rob Reiner built his career on stories about human connection. His films explore the complexities of relationships, the importance of empathy, and the beauty of people from different backgrounds finding common ground. When Harry Met Sally was about two people who seemed incompatible learning to see past their differences. The Princess Bride was about love conquering all obstacles. Stand By Me was about friendship and loyalty. These movies resonated with audiences because they reminded us of our shared humanity. Yet somewhere along the way, according to Jake's perspective, Rob lost touch with those very themes that made his work so powerful. The man who directed stories about connection and understanding became someone who struggles to connect with and understand people in his own life. The irony is almost too painful to bear. Jake's warning also raises important questions about family loyalty and when it's appropriate to speak publicly about private matters. In most cases, we expect family members to keep their disagreements behind closed doors. We consider it a betrayal when someone airs dirty laundry in public, especially when it involves a parent. Family loyalty is supposed to be one of the strongest bonds we have. So why did Jake choose to break that unspoken rule? The answer probably lies in the magnitude of what Jake observed and the potential impact of staying silent. Maybe Jake reached a point where he realized that protecting his father's image was less important than speaking a truth that could help others. Maybe he saw his father's behavior affecting not just their family but countless other people who looked up to Rob Reiner as a leader and role model. Maybe Jake decided that enabling his father's destructive patterns by staying quiet would ultimately cause more harm than addressing the issue publicly. This decision couldn't have been easy. Jake knew that speaking out would invite criticism from multiple directions. His father's supporters would accuse him of betrayal, of being disloyal, of trying to undermine his father's important work. His father's critics would try to use Jake's words as ammunition in their own battles against Rob Reiner. Jake himself will be analyzed and judged, his motive questioned, his character debated by people who don't know him at all. But Jake spoke anyway, and that fact alone tells us something important about the seriousness of what he witnessed. People don't risk their family relationships, their privacy, and their reputation over trivial matters. They don't invite public scrutiny unless they believe the stakes are high enough to justify the personal cost. The response to Jake's warning has been predictably mixed. Some people praise Jake for his courage, for being willing to speak difficult truths even when it meant going against his own father. They saw his warning as a necessary intervention, the kind of honest feedback that someone in Rob Reiner's position desperately needs to hear. These supporters viewed Jake as someone trying to save his father from himself, trying to prevent further damage to relationships and to Rob's own legacy. Others criticized Jake harshly. They accused him of seeking attention, of being ungrateful for the opportunities his father's success provided, of choosing the worst possible way to address family issues. Some defended Rob Reiner fiercely, arguing that his passionate advocacy is exactly what the world needs, that compromise and moderation are luxuries we can't afford when fighting for justice and truth. They saw Jake's warning as an attack on everything Rob stands for. The reality, as it usually is, probably lies somewhere in the middle. Jake's warning doesn't mean that everything Rob Reiner believes is wrong or that his activism is meaningless. It doesn't erase the positive impact Rob has had through his films and his advocacy work. But it also doesn't mean that Rob is beyond criticism or that his approach to activism hasn't caused genuine harm to his relationships and possibly to the causes he champions. What Jake's warning really does is highlight a universal human struggle. How do we balance conviction with compassion? How do we stand firmly for our beliefs while remaining open to dialogue and understanding? How do we fight for what we think is right without becoming the very thing we claim to oppose? These aren't easy questions, and they don't have simple answers. The danger that Jake identified in his father is a danger that all of us face in our own lives. It's easy to convince ourselves that we're on the right side of history, that our beliefs are based on fact and reason while everyone else is deluded or deceived. It's comfortable to surround ourselves with people who think exactly like we do, who reinforce our worldview and never challenge our assumptions. It's satisfying to feel morally superior to those who disagree with us. But that comfort and satisfaction come at a steep price. When we stop listening to others, we stop growing. When we dismiss everyone who disagrees with us as ignorant or evil, we lose the ability to find common ground and create real change. When we prioritize being right over being kind, we damage relationships that might never be repaired. When we become so rigid in our thinking that we can't even hear criticism from the people who love us most, we've lost something essential to our humanity. Jake's warning to the world, through the example of his father, is that this path leads nowhere good. It leads to isolation, bitterness, and ultimately to failure in achieving the very goals we claim to care about most. Because real change, lasting change, doesn't happen through force or through convincing everyone to think exactly like we do. It happens through connection, through finding shared values even with people who seem completely different from us, through building bridges instead of burning them. The personal cost of this dynamic within the Reiner family must be immense. Imagine the conversations that must have happened, or perhaps the conversations that couldn't happen because the gap between father and son had grown too wide. Imagine the frustration Jake must have felt trying to reach his father, trying to help him see what was happening, only to be dismissed or ignored. Imagine the pain Rob must feel hearing his own son criticize him publicly, wondering where their relationship went wrong, perhaps even unable to see the validity in Jake's concerns. This is a tragedy at the heart of Jake's warning. It's not just about politics or activism or public persona. It's about a father and son who have drifted apart because of the very issues Jake is trying to address. It's about love that remained but connection that's been damaged, maybe irreparably. It's about the universal experience of watching someone you care about go down a path you believe is destructive and feeling powerless to stop them. What can we learn from Jake Reiner's warning? First, that self-reflection is crucial no matter how successful or accomplished we become. Rob Reiner's achievements don't make him immune to losing his way. If anything, success and acclaim can make it harder to receive honest feedback because we're surrounded by people who agree with us and rarely challenge our thinking. We need people in our lives who will tell us the truth even when it's uncomfortable, even when it might upset us. Second, we learn that our beliefs and values should be held firmly but not rigidly. There's a difference between having strong convictions and being unwilling to listen to any perspective that doesn't perfectly align with our own. We can stand for what we believe in while remaining open to dialogue, to nuance, to the possibility that we might be wrong about some things or the issues might be more complex than we initially thought. Third, we learn that how we advocate for our beliefs matters just as much as the beliefs themselves. If we're fighting for justice but treating people unjustly in the process, we've already lost. If we're promoting compassion but showing none to those who disagree with us, we're hypocrites. If we're working toward a better world but destroying our own relationships and mental health along the way, we need to reconsider our approach. Finally, Jake's warning reminds us of the importance of courage. It takes courage to speak truth to power, even when that power is your own father. It takes courage to risk relationships for the sake of honesty. It takes courage to invite criticism and controversy because you believe something needs to be said. Jake demonstrated that courage, and regardless of how you feel about the specifics of the situation, that courage deserves recognition. As we wrap up this story, think about your own life. Are there areas where you become too rigid, too convinced of your own rightness? Are there relationships you've damaged because you prioritize being right over being kind? Are there people in your life trying to tell you something important that you're refusing to hear? Jake Reiner's warning about his father is ultimately a warning for all of us. Don't let your convictions harden into something that isolates you from the people you love and from the very humanity you claim to be fighting for. The story of Jake and Rob Reiner is still unfolding. We don't know if this public warning will lead to reconciliation or deeper division. We don't know if Rob will hear his son's message and make changes, or if he'll dismiss it as misguided criticism. We don't know how this will affect their relationship in the long term. What we do know is that Jake said something important, something that needed to be said, and now the choice of what to do with that message rests with Rob and with all of us who heard it. If this story moved you, if Jake's courage inspired you, if his warning made you think about your own life and relationships, then do me a favor. Hit that like button to help this message reach more people who need to hear it. Share this video with someone in your life who might benefit from Jake's wisdom. And subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories that matter, stories that challenge us to be better, stories that remind us of what really counts in life. Drop a comment below telling me what you think about Jake's warning, and whether you believe he did the right thing by speaking publicly. Let's keep this conversation going because this isn't just about one family in Hollywood. This is about all of us and the kind of people we choose to be.